me. I just know that it's, from what I've been told, it's made everything so much better for me. So
it's been useful for someone like myself in plastic surgery because we get very many challenging wounds that we don't have the best answers for. And many of the operations we might envision are very huge and complex. But on somebody who's very ill, who maybe has had radiation, who has a lot of other problems, and maybe they just won't give up cigarettes and we know they won't heal well, we now have other options for them. So it's not as quick as a flap operation or where we move something from one part of the body to another. But again, we don't have the body to sacrifice that. So if I told you you had to take a muscle off of your back to save your foot, you might let me do it. But what if I told you maybe you don't have to? The game gets much more interesting then.
Awesome. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Awesome.
well, a lot's happened in the last 3 years. Right after our interview back then, I started working at SLU.
Andrew has been a remarkable person because he is got energy and a drive for living and a love of life, which is almost unparalleled.
Was asked to use my experience as a patient to lead and develop a kind of enhanced approach to trauma care, where we really take that awesome medical care that Dr. Kraemer and the rest of the SLU care physicians provide and bridge it with a holistic program where you have somebody like me, a pure patient visitor, who can sit there and be at the bedside of these new trauma patients. I spend a good amount of time over on the hospital, actually on the same floor that I was a patient for 4 weeks. I've actually been in the same room that I was in for 4 weeks with another patient.
He, through his healing, has realized that God's plan for him is to give back to others, and so he's doing that. And his ability to help other patients totally heal themselves has been great.
So I lost a lot of my scalp in the attack. A lot of it was ripped off, and normally, as the skin repairs itself, it should have left me with a lot of scarring on the top of my head, which would mean I would be bald and wouldn't have that hair, wouldn't have those sweat glands. But with Dr. Kraemer and the Matrastem that he uses, it actually allowed normal hair tissue to grow on my head. So instead of having a nice scarred scalp, I have these beautiful, well, used to be beautiful long locks, but I decided, because I was able to actually have hair again and grow it out, wanting to donate it to Pantene Beautiful Lengths hair program, where they send hair like that to women with cancer.
The day of the accident was a normal day. Very normal. I was ready to go home. I think we were running our last coil, actually.
I met Ben probably over a year ago now, over in Dr. Kraemer's office. We actually had very similar injuries in terms of our amputation level on our right foot.
About every 15 reps or so, I would see a dark mark on the edge. So I wanted to fix that before the whole coil ran. So that's what I was doing. I went up to the top of the machine and I was checking the knives, and when they felt good, and then I felt something that didn't feel so good, and it was my leg going into the machine.
Ben had an unfortunate injury in that the machine managed to catch his foot and then really pulled his skin off, much as a sock would be coming off of a foot. So it was a total degloving from his toes all the way up to above his ankle.
Went into the emergency room, obviously. I still hadn't looked at my foot at this point, so I didn't know if it was still there, what was up with it.
Classically, while a few patients in the world's literature have had that skin replaced, one often leads to an amputation. So we were able to use the device in the powder form along with his own skin and get that to heal back again.
I was definitely amazed by it because I had never read up on anything like it before, and to see living proof with other patients of Dr. Kraemer, with the help that it's done and the things that it's done, it definitely amazed me.
it was touch and go, and then we got to a point where he kept having the wounds on the end of his foot break down. And it turns out that the bones, the joints there, the first joints of the knuckles, if you will, of the correlate on the foot, they kept breaking down. He had chronic infections in that, and we didn't know that. So when we amputated those bone pieces off, we then didn't have all the healing we wanted. We used a lot more of the device, and he's had good solid healing now. So he's actually been released from follow-up care. So that's very exciting that we did standard operations to him with this augmentation. But the most astounding thing is that the sensation he has on the bottom of his foot is normal. So I wouldn't have expected that. And the heel pad skin, where you need thickness, is starting to thicken up just like a heel pad would. So classically the skin would have been scarred down and broken down, but he's actually having it thicken up with callus as one's heel would. So we've replaced the skin, and it's acting as it would if it hadn't been injured in the first place, which is very exciting.
Both, young guys, and it was really cool to get to meet him and actually meet somebody who's going through what I am. That's kind of the whole reason behind me visiting with patients, but at the same time it helps me.
I think having a support group is I think everybody who goes through any type of trauma needs support, and what they're doing is phenomenal. People need it. I spent over a month in the hospital, and you go through all these emotions, and to have somebody walk up and just introduce themselves and be like, hey, this is my story, can you tell me a little bit about yours? I think that's a really good thing.
He had a great outcome, and he's just a great guy. So it's just nice to see him walking with both of his feet.
He's just always forward looking, and he makes me laugh whenever we meet, and just to see that there's people out there that have that strength in them just makes me feel that I'm not alone. It makes me feel like what I'm doing is important.
I think the two of them have gotten each other emotional support, because Ben has had to deal with a whole lot himself in terms of being around his child and always being the sick one with the foot problem. But now, aside from wearing shoes with an insert, he can be back to normal. Part of it's when you have an injury, you have to find forgiveness in your heart. That doesn't always come easily. But sharing and talking it through with others, somehow there's some acceptance and forgiveness that comes, and move on with the gift of life and joy of life.
I always felt like there was people there that were rooting for me and wanted to see me succeed, and if they believed in me, why shouldn't I believe in myself? And that's really what we're trying to recreate here, and getting to see how well Ben has done in the last, since his injuries in the last couple of years it's remarkable. He's walking again, just like me. The doctors said we might not walk normally again, but we are, and it's just so cool to see his growth. Oh, Dr. Kraemer's the best. He's an amazing mentor, and even better friend. Have traveled together. We've given talks together, joint talks, kind of, patient provider kind of talks. We've gone to some conferences together, and went to a really cool conference in Orlando a few months ago, and actually ended up staying another day, and he and I went to Universal Studios. And
you were better because you've known Andrew, and so I think he's had that effect on people even before his injury, but definitely now that it's just people affect you that way. There's a handful of people I've been grateful for, so I consider him a patient, but more importantly, I consider him a friend.
I've had a lot of blessings over the last several years. Surviving, first of all, getting my care here at SLU, as well as getting this opportunity to lead a new approach to trauma care. But one of probably the greatest gift that I have received is my little baby Lily. She's actually 10 months old today, and she's just the brightest part of my world, and nothing makes me happier than watching her grow and learn, and such a proud dad, and none of this would have happened if I didn't go through what I went through. And I can't be any more thankful for my doctors who have given me the ability to walk again and live again, because I can play with my daughter. You know, those were some of my worries when I was first in the hospital. Was, first of all, would anybody ever, you know, love me? You know, with all my scars and amputations, and would it, if that happened and I had kids one day, would I even be able to play with them, or would I be confined to a bed or something like that? And with the level of healing that St. Louis University and all of its physicians have given me, I get to play with her all day long and crawl around with her. And now she's getting ready to walk, so I get to be there to walk alongside of her, and it's a dream come true.
As far as the SLU Care Physicians Group, they're a network, and a network is just like a chain. You're only as strong as your weakest link. They don't have a weak link. Dr. Boudreau, Dr. Putty, Dr. Cargis, Dr. Whiting, on and on. I mean, if you count my emergency rooms, I had probably about 20 different operations or procedures. And I even got cards from the prep, where you go in, you prep for surgery. I got cards from the nurses and the caregivers that, it was good having you there because they knew who I was, and they're there to help, and they do help.
While sometimes it's experimental, we share with the patient so they can partner with us. And again, they feel the joy and participation in their healing because they understand it. So many of the patients have become experts on layers of the pig bladder, which they never, I'm sure, dreamed they would ever do. We've been very excited about how we've been able to achieve healing with a wide variety of injuries. What's wonderful about the SLU Care family here is that we all play together well, and so I can be sure that the patients have wonderful expertise and management of all their medical problems, so I can purely focus on the wounds, and with that we get really good outcomes here.
I like knowing the science behind it because it gives me an understanding of why I'm healing the way I am, as opposed to why I wouldn't be if we didn't have the pig's bladder stem cell.
I'm even getting phone calls now from around the world where people want to fly in to be seen because they have now known what we can achieve with what's been out there in the media or out there in the different seminars or presentations I've given.
He's good. He knows it, but at the same time, I don't think he knows how good he is. And he's so preoccupied in trying to help people. At one point, he asked me what he's going to do with this here. And I said, "Can you make me look good?" And he said, "He's not a miracle worker. He's a doctor, but he's not a miracle worker." Just jokingly, he is a miracle worker though, in his own way, and I believe that.
We're very thankful. Who would think that science would come up with something like this?